The City of Ember by Jean Duprat, published in 2003. The instructions. When the city of Ember was just built and not yet inhabited, the chief builder and the assistant builder, both of them weary, sat down to speak of the future. "They must not leave the city for at least 200 years, said the chief builder. Or perhaps 220. "Is that long enough?" asked his assistant. "It should be. We can't know for sure." "And when the time comes," said the assistant, "how will they know what to do?" "We'll provide them with instructions, of course," the chief builder replied. "But who will keep the instructions? Who can we trust to keep them safe and secret all that time?" "The mayor of the city will keep the instructions," said the builder. "We'll put them in a box with a timed lock, set to open on the proper date." "And will we tell the mayor what's in the box?" the assistant asked. "No, just that it's information they won't need and must not see until the box opens of its own accord. So the first mayor will pass the box to the next mayor, and that one to the next, and so on down through the years, all of them keeping it secret all that time?" "What else can we do?" asked the chief builder. "Nothing about this endeavor is certain. There may be no one left in the city by then, or no safe place for them to come back to." So the first mayor of Ember was given the box, told to guard it carefully, and solemnly sworn to secrecy. When she grew old and her time as the mayor was up, she explained about the box to her successor, who also kept the secret carefully, as did the next mayor. Things went as planned for many years. But the 17th mayor of Ember was less honorable than the ones who had come before him, and more desperate. He was ill. He had the coughing sickness that was common in the city then, and he thought the box might hold a secret that would save his life. He took it from its hiding place in the basement of the gathering hall and brought it home with him, where he attacked it with a hammer. But his strength was failing by then. All he managed to do was dent the lid a little. And before he could return the box to its official hiding place or tell his successor about it, he died. The box ended up at the back of a closet, shoved behind some old bags and bundles. There it sat, unnoticed, year after year, until its time arrived and the lock quietly clicked open. The People of Sparks, the Second Book of Ember, by Jean Duprat. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Hate multiplies hate. Violence multiplies violence. And toughness multiplies toughness in a descending spiral of destruction. Martin Luther King Jr. Strength to Love, 1963. The Message. Dear people of Ember, we came down the river from the pipe works and found the way to another place. It is green here and very big. Light comes from the sky. You must follow the instructions in this message and come on the river. Bring food with you. Come as quickly as you can. Lena Mayfleet and Dune Harrow. Anyways, The City of Ember, Diamond of Darkhold, the third Book of Ember. The Vault. Around the middle of the 21st century, when it seemed that a great catastrophe was about to engulf the world, an underground city was built as a last refuge for the human race. It was called the City of Ember. The builders, who designed the city and constructed it, tried to cast their minds into the future, not only to imagine what the residents of the city would need for the many years they'd live there, but also to imagine what life might be like for them when they came back out into the world above ground. It was this later question that was on the chief builder's mind on a day when the city was nearly finished and global tensions were rising fast. He summoned his assistant to discuss it. When the people emerge from the city, he said, they will find themselves in a devastated world. Unfortunately true, said his assistant. Life would be very hard for them, said the chief builder, who was the kind of person who worried about the well-being of others. I'm wondering if there's something we can do to give them a head start. The assistant waited, raising his eyebrows politely. I have an idea, the chief builder said. My idea is to give them one thing from today's world, one of our newest inventions, that we know they'll need. Excellent, said the assistant, who had no clue what that one thing might be. We need a location, the chief builder said, not far from the exit spot, where we can build a vault into the side of the mountain. We'll put a timed lock on its door, of course, so that it won't be accessible until it should be, just as in our plan for the instructions for egress. The vault should be placed so that the citizens of Ember will come across it when they emerge. Certainly, said the assistant. He made one note. Select location. But will people who have lived in Ember know what to do with the contents of the vault? Probably not, said the chief builder. And naturally, I have thought of that. We'll provide a printed book explaining in detail everything they'll need to know. I see, said the assistant. A good plan. So it was done. A large steel-lined room was built into the side of the mountain and stocked according to the chief builder's instructions. Then the door was sealed. Despite the builder's fears, the catastrophe did not happen immediately. The mid-century crisis eased. 50 years later, however, the world came once more to the brink of war, and the government put its plan into action. Volunteers were assembled, couples were formed, and babies were given to each couple. The city of Ember received its first inhabitants. The bombs fell. Cities burned all over the world. People died in the millions, and plagues and famines and floods reduced even further the numbers of those who were left. It was many, many years before the scattered survivors of the disaster began to rebuild any sort of civilization. The people of Ember came out of their underground cities somewhat later than planned, because they were in a state of bewilderment and exhaustion when they emerged, and because trees had grown up where trees hadn't been before. They failed to notice the door to the vault. They trudged away over the hills until they arrived at the village of Sparks, where, after a struggle, they took up their lives anew. Instead, it was a roamer who discovered the vault. The door wasn't locked. He opened it and went inside, where he found one thing that was interesting, which he took, and one thing that was not interesting, a large, heavy book with small print. Like many people in those times, he had lost the skill of reading. He flipped the book open and scowled at its pages. Should he take it or not? Yes, he decided. He might be able to sell it someday. If not, he could use it for starting fires. The Prophet of Yonwood. The story starts off with a young girl named Nickel who is traveling with her Aunt Crystal to an old house in Yonwood, North Carolina. Oh wait, no, it's Nikki. Nikki's great-grandfather has died, and the house where he lived, in a neighborhood called Greenhaven, is inherited by Crystal, who plans to sell it. Over time, Nikki begins to love the house, excuse me, and finds a girl named Amanda who lives there. She is there because she used to look after Arthur Green, the great-grandfather of Nikki. Plus, Amanda has a dog named Otis that she gives to Nikki. In Yonwood, there is a prophet named Althea Tower who sees the future of the world in burning flames and smoke, and subsequently spends months in a dreamlike semi-conscious state in which she mutters phrases and words. A woman in the town calls them instructions from God and requires townspeople to comply with her interpretation of the words, and insists that the entire city quit their wrong ways and start to be good people, so God would be with them. She becomes the power that directs the police in the town to enforce the war against evil and slaps buzzing bracelets on offenders who don't comply. These so-called instructions gradually become more and more strict and unreasonable, beginning with things like no sinners, no singing, no lights, and eventually no dogs. During the time, the verbal conflict between the U.S. and the Phalanx nations is going on. The U.S. fears that the Phalanx nations are trying to send terrorist spies to the U.S. and they take immediate action, although the U.S. never really goes to war with them until 50 years later. Nikki meets a boy named Grover who is obsessed with snakes, but has to give them away because Miss Beeson says that they are sinful. There is also an old, grumpy man named Hoyt McCoy who is mean. However, he ends up being a kind man. He studies the stars and made contact with aliens. Hoyt McCoy went to Washington and stopped the war. In the end of the book, Nikki writes a journal that she hides behind a rock for someone to read later in the future. In the city of Ember, Lena Mayfleet and Dune Harrow find the journal when they are escaping, leaving an Ember. And in the Diamond of Darkhold, a satellite sent out by Hoyt and other scientists is sent off into space, which later returns to Earth from an alien planet. Well, that's fine and dandy, except it doesn't tell me how they find hope in such a dark time. The Prophet of Yonwood is it's a prequel to The City of Ember, though it is published after the second book, which is The People of Sparks, I think. Hang on a minute. Okay. Writing.